Hey everybody, it's me Malik from ApprovedCreditSolution.com. I'd like to thank you for joining today's free workshop on how to repair your own credit. So today I'm going to show you some of the basics of credit repair. So first of all, I'll give you a little background. About 3 years ago, I was in a tough financial situation. My credit score was probably in the low 400s. I couldn't get approved for anything, not a car loan, not even a unsecured credit line of credit, nothing. I was just getting turned down and denied everywhere. Okay, and then I came across a mentor of mine who was teaching credit repair at the time. And this person had showed me something that I wish that they had taught me in high school, and I really think that they should teach credit repair in high school, because no matter who you are, what walk of life you're going into, you're going to need credit. Okay, so the technique that I learned to repair my own credit is something called debt validation. Some of you may have heard of this before. Some of you might be new, don't even know what a credit file is. It's all right wherever you are. This is the technique that I use, and I think it's the most effective. And the way I implement it is through something called an administrative process. All right, so debt validation through administrative process. Basically, that's a fancy word for saying mail, right? So we do it through the mail. Okay, so the first thing that you're gonna have to do when repairing your own credit is, of course, get a copy of your credit files, okay? So there's 3 credit agencies in the country, and that is Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Okay, the most effective way that I found of getting your credit file is to contact the agencies directly. I know that there's other third-party companies like annualcreditreport.com, Credit Karma, etc., right? They say that they'll do this service for you, but I find surefire way to do it is just contact the credit bureaus. Okay, so by law, they must provide you with 1 report every 12 months. Okay, so each agency by law has to give you 1 free credit report, free credit report every 12 months. Now I'll tell you from experience, I've been doing this for over 3 years now, that I have never been turned down for a free credit report. I mean, I order mine several times a year, probably every quarter, and they have never said, hey, no, you've already gotten your free credit report this year. So you could usually order them consistently and they don't mind. So all you do is you just write a short letter. It's just a very plain English saying, hey, look, I think that there is inaccuracies or errors on report, and I would like a copy for review. Right? So I have a feeling that there's inaccuracies or errors on my credit file. I'd like a free copy for my review, right? Signed so-and-so. Okay, so you write up a 1-page letter, very, very simple, could be a couple sentences. Now, you want to include these very few vital pieces of information to make sure that they do send your credit report, and that is the following. Make sure you have your most current name, address, and your SIN, or social insurance, or if you're in Canada, what is it called? Social Security, excuse me. SIN or Social Security number, United States, right? Okay, so SIN in Canada, Social Security number, whatever it is, you know what I mean. Okay, so you want to include those and 2 copies of government ID. Okay, this will ensure that they verify your identity and there's no problems, and you'll 100% of the time get your credit file. Okay, if you don't have two pieces of government ID, like a driver's license and your SIM card, I don't know, you can use like a phone bill or something that has your address on it that also matches your other piece of ID. So you could send in like your driver's license and a phone bill that has the same name and stuff like that, and that usually works. All right, so that was step one, which was order your report. Step two is review. So on your report, you're going to want to review a few things. Firstly, on your report, they start usually with your name, your address, your employment, and your identification. So you want to check and make sure that those things are accurate as well. Okay, so make sure your name, address, and employment are up to date. Now, what I usually do is I send, again, another very simple one-page letter. I mean, we don't have to make this complicated. You don't have to hire an attorney for $1,500 to do this stuff for you. Just go to, Google Documents and say, hey, look, you use your most current name, address, and employment, and you say, hey, look, I only live here, work here, and I'm identified by this person, because they will list all your, for 10 years, everything in regards to this. So you say, I no longer work or live at these following places, okay? So you want to just pick one of each and notify them, say, hey, look, I just want to be, I only live here, I'm only known by so-and-so, and the following is false, okay? Very simple. And the reason being is because that information is connected to the debts that we are going to dispute later. So you want to clean that up, so that way when you do your investigation, or when the agency does the investigation on your behalf, if the accounts don't add up with what they have on file, they got to remove the debts, because they are bound by what is called the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which states they must report with 100% accuracy. So in theory, they couldn't report accurately a debt that is connected to an address which is obviously not on file. You get what I'm saying? Okay, so moving on now. Okay, so the next part about reviewing your file, right? We're still on reviewing. Is the debts themselves. All right, so when you're looking through your debts, you want to, again, look for inaccurate information, errors such as wrong address, wrong name. Sometimes you've paid a debt and it still shows up on your credit file, so already paid. And the other really important one is statute of limitations. I'll explain that. So statute of limitations, right? That is basically, excuse me, that is the time frame that somebody can pursue you for a debt. So I know where I live, it varies from state to state, right? So where I live, that's 6 years. So if I find anything on my credit file that is older than 6 years and they're saying I owe that, you just notify them and say, hey, look, that debt is past the statute of limitations. Again, they have to automatically remove it, okay? Inquiries. There's two types, soft and hard. Soft inquiries, those are usually you, right? Those are usually like when you're ordering your credit files, or also what shows up here quite often is like your personal bank or something like that. Like if you bank with Bank of America and you try to open up a line of credit with them and they check your credit file, usually those show up as soft because you already have some sort of business relation, okay? The hard inquiries are third parties, it's a new creditor, they don't know you, right? So they're doing a hard inquiry on your credit file, okay? So those actually, the hard inquiries affect your Those ones affect your credit rating, and the soft ones do not. Okay, so we don't have to worry too much about those. These ones we want to dispute, okay? So we'll get to disputing in a moment. But you want to, again, go through your inquiries and make sure that everything is accurate. If you see any inquiries that you don't remember actually asking for any lines of credit, like you'll see a list, right? You'll see like XYZ places, they inquired on your credit because apparently you asked them to extend you a loan, right? But if you see somebody that you don't know, that's grounds for dispute. Okay, so after reviewing, I think we're on step 4 now, 3 or 4, is validation. Okay, so we're going to do validation letters. Okay, so first validation letters for the debts or negative accounts. And the other one is for the inquiries. I do too. Okay, so a debt validation is basically we want to know if that debt is lawful. All right, so how we do that is by asking for 3 things. One is being the wet ink signed contract. Okay, this is the most important thing. In order for there to be a debt, there has to be some sort of obligation created through a contract. So whoever's claiming the debt against you, whether it's the original creditor or a collection agency, they have to be able to provide that in order to say that they lawfully have any claim against you. All right, so the other one is the accounting. Right, you want to ask them for the accounting ledger, right, that shows that there was a profit loss, right? So this is very important, especially with debt collectors, because debt collectors will never, ever, ever be able to provide that. If they may be able to provide a contract if they have what's called an assignment. We'll get to that in a sec. But they won't be able to produce this, showing that their corporation had actually extended you some form of credit and there was a profit and loss. They could never show it because you never asked them for money in the first place. They're a third party. All right, so the third thing that we ask for, is the assignment. Right, so if there's some sort of debt in the first place to the original creditor who then transferred the debt to a third party, if they did that lawfully, there should be a paper trail, and that's usually called an assignment. All right, so in that case, it might have this, but what I've found is if they ever do produce anything that is close to this, it's not the original. Okay, you need the original. It'll usually be a photocopy or some Xerox of a account statement or something like that. That's not a wet ink contract. Okay, so we ask for these 3 things. There's a few other questions you can ask, of course, but this is the meat and potatoes. All right, so the wet ink contract, the accounting showing profit and loss, and the deed of assignment if you're dealing with a collector that shows that they have the right to collect on behalf of the creditor. Now you might be asking, well, why do we ask for that? Well, I'll tell you. Fair Credit Reporting Act, right? This binds the agencies. Fair Credit Reporting Act, it's the code that binds the agencies, okay? So whoever governs the agencies, that's what they're called. And in Canada, actually we'll get to that in a second because they're called something else in Canada. But so section 609 states exactly what we said when we're asking for the wet ink contract. It says in order to verify a debt, the original, I think they call it consumer note, / wet ink contract, right, must be shown according to section 609. So you can look that up. I mean, I'm not just making this up, it's coming directly from their rules, all right? So the other one is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Okay, so you should get familiar with these two. You can look them up online. Usually there's free PDFs everywhere. But this one binds collectors. Right, so all the rules that have to do with debt collectors are there. All the rules that have to do with the agencies are here. Now, if you live in Canada, it's called something different, but it's the same thing. And that is the PIPEDA. I know it's a long one. So PIPEDA, that's the Personal Information and Electronic Documents. Oh, sorry, Personal Information Protection. Wait, did I spell that right? PIPEDA, right? Yeah, Protection and Electronic Documents Act. Personal information. All right, and then there should be one on a provincial level. Sorry, it's just a little PIPEDA, Personal Information Protection Act, and the other one was the without the electronic documents. That's it. That's what I thought. Personal Information Protection Act. All right, so the Personal Information Protection Act, that's like on a provincial level. So each province will have a different act, and then the federal is PIPEDA, that's the Personal Information and Electronic Documents Act. So you should look those up and find out what your rules are in regards to the credit agencies and the collectors. All right, so validation letters, all right? So we went over the basics, right? So again, I do have validation letters already prepared that you can use, but if you want to write your own, you can as well. Of course, very simply, you write, dear agency, I don't know whether or not I owe this debt. Could you please conduct an investigation to find out if they are valid and they are mine? And could you please show me XYZ, which is, of course, the wet ink, the assignment, and the accounting, okay? Now, they have 30 days by law to do this investigation. So after 30 days, the agencies are going to come back and say, here's our investigation report. This account we removed, that account we removed, this account we did not, that one we did, whatever. It's going to be like, a breakdown of their investigation. And then at the very bottom, they're going to say, okay, we recommend that you contact the creditors in regards to the ones that they found to be verified, because some will come back verified, obviously, right? So the ones that are verified, we are then going to move on to the collectors / creditors. I'd always recommend calling the creditors. Usually they're out of the picture, right? Because the creditors, they once you default, they get paid off, right? Their insurance covers any profit or loss in that retrospect, like when somebody defaults on a loan, they get paid by the insurance. Okay, so the creditors are usually out of the equation, but a good tip is to give them a phone call and say, hey, look, account such and such on this date, owing whatnot, right? Is this account still open? Do I still have an account with you? How much do I owe? Ask them these questions. What I found out from my investigation is that when I call the creditors, they say, we don't have an account with you, that has been charged off, or whatever. They'll tell you something. So that's good information to have, because you can then use that against the collectors, and also notify the agencies that, hey, the creditor is no longer pursuing me for the debt. Who is this person, this collector, right? Okay, so verify. Now we're going to try a validation with the collectors, right? So same thing. You're going to do your administrative process, right? And this is usually done with 3 letters when you're dealing with collectors. When you're dealing with agencies, usually I just send 1 letter and let them do their 30-day investigation. With the agencies, we want to do an administrative process and break it down with 3 letters over a 30-day period. Okay, so you do 1 letter asking for, okay, you're asking them for the contract, the accounting, and the assignment, right? Give them 15 days to respond. Okay, then you're going to follow up with another letter after the 15 days saying, hey, same thing, you're going to say, you know, I had previously sent you a letter by registered mail. Let me add that. Make sure that this is all done registered mail. Why we do registered mail is so that you have proof of your paper trail. So that if you ever have to go to small claims court, you can show a judge, hey, look, I tried to settle this matter. I sent letters on this date, that date, and this date, and here is the registered mailing proof, and the interested party did not respond, okay? So do it all by registered mail. All right, so you're asking for the same thing in your second letter, except for this time, you're gonna give them less, right? So maybe 7 days, or 5, whatever you want. So you say, you know, Mr. Collector, I sent you a letter. I was looking for the proof of the debt. I gave you 15 days. You didn't respond. Here's the second notice. Okay, same thing. This time, please respond within 5 or 7 days. XYZ, you know, signed John Doe, right? So then, third part, notice of default. And opportunity, some people call it that. Right, notice of default and opportunity to cure. So this is the last step. You're saying, hey, look, you're gonna, what I do it on my own. Sometimes I just write up a little affidavit and I get 2, you know, friends, close friends to witness it. You can also go to a notary, which I suggest. This is really powerful. Right, you go to a notary, you bring your first 2 letters and say, hey, look, I was trying to contact this collector, see if they had the paperwork. They didn't respond, so now I need you, Mr. Notary, to do a notice of default and opportunity to cure. So it's just a final letter. Usually a notary will draft it for you. It just basically states, you know, we've tried to contact you several times, you haven't responded, here's your last chance. Otherwise, we are going to take you to small claims court. That's usually what a notice of default and opportunity to cure is. Okay, so that will go off. The notary will send it off for you. It might cost you $10 or whatever. If you have a good credit union, quite often they'll do it for free. And that's it. So that's your 3-letter process. Okay, so we'll just break it down so everybody understands, right? The first letter, you're asking the collector, do you have the contract? Do you have the account ledgering showing profit and loss? And do you have an assignment? Are you allowed to collect this debt on the behalf of the creditor? Okay. Second day, same thing. You're telling them, hey, look, this is second notice. And you give them less time. Okay, please provide X, Y, Z. You have now 5 to 7 days. Okay, third, you go to your notary, say, hey, look, they haven't responded. I need you to draft me a notice of default, and they'll send it on your behalf. Okay, after that, step 5, All right, this is how you get them off your credit file. So once you have done your administrative process, it took about 30 days. You are going to then send those 3 letters. Make sure you always make 2 copies of everything, right? So whenever you're doing a mailing to an agency or collector, make 1 of your own copies and make 1 to send out, okay? And with your notice of defaults and everything, okay? So 2 copies of all documents, right? Because when you want to go back, if you have to go to court or if you want to notify the agency of the default, you're going to need your copies that you can again make a new copy and send to them. Does that make sense? Okay. So you're going to send your 3 letters with your default in there, right, to the agency. Again, a 1-page document that you write up on, Google Docs says, hey, look, Mr. Agency, I did my own private administrative process in regards to whatever account that was in dispute. And the claimant never responded. They never even responded. They didn't send me back anything, okay? And you can show that through your notice of default that was notarized, and they should remove the debt at that point, okay? Now, quite often what happens, I'll just touch on that before we move on, is the collector might respond. They might respond with usually bullshit. They quite often respond with like something that is not even close to a wet ink contract. Let me be specific. Section 609, right, of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. They must have the original wet ink consumer agreement. Right, so if a collector says they send you back a letter says you do owe this debt according to this is their evidence, and quite often what it is, it's just an account statement. I'm like, how is that a wedding contract? I asked you for a wedding contract and a ledger showing profit and loss and a deed of assignment. Okay, this is an account statement, and plus it's a photocopy. Okay, section 609, original wet ink consumer agreement, very important. Okay, the same process can obviously be applied to your inquiries, right? You do the same thing, say, hey, look, Mr. Agency, I don't think I authorized this inquiry. Can you show me the wedding contract? That's section 609. Okay, unauthorized inquiries. All right, so the last step, of course, repeat. You just repeat. It's that simple, right? Go ahead, then order your new credit file. They usually send you an updated copy, but if they don't, just order a new credit file, right? And start the process over again. Start with the credit bureau. Say, hey, look, credit bureau, your file should be smaller at this point, but there'll still be accounts there. And you say, hey, look, this account, that account, I'd like you to validate it. Okay, they're going to come back and say X, Y, Z, and then you take that information, whatever's left, whatever collectors are left, and again, you validate with the collectors until finally your credit file is clean and you have a nice credit score. Okay, so when I accept clients, I tell them usually I can do this in 30 to 90 days. It's usually about how long it takes, right? It takes about 30 days for the credit bureaus to respond on the initial validation. Then usually it takes another 30 days to do your own investigation with the collectors or the creditors. Then it might take another 30 days, right, to bring you to 90 to, notify the agencies that certain collectors are in default, right? And then you start the process over again. So that's it. That's my workshop on Credit Repair 101. If you have any questions or you'd like to hire me to help you to repair your credit, please contact me, Malik, at approvedcreditsolution@gmail.com. Peace.